Across jungles, deserts, and coastlines, stone cities still stand. Pyramids wrapped in vines, palaces shattered by time, streets laid out with perfect precision. But the people who built them are gone. The Maya left towering temples and empty plazas. The Indus Valley left sealed streets and silent drainage channels. The Minoans left frescoed halls and collapsed courtyards near the sea. Entire civilizations reached astonishing scale, then emptied out. No final message, no clear timeline, no single answer. What makes a powerful empire stop functioning, abandon its cities, and vanish into the dust? The clues remain in ruins, broken walls, and scattered artifacts.
The ancient world, with all its grandeur and complexity, is filled with stories of empires that once ruled vast regions, shaping the course of history. The walls of monumental cities, the ruins of majestic temples, and the remnants of sophisticated societies stand as silent witnesses to their former glory. Yet, despite the undeniable achievements of these great civilizations, a recurring mystery remains. What causes an empire to vanish without a trace? How could societies so advanced, so full of promise, simply cease to exist, leaving behind only fragments, whispers of their existence, and unanswered questions? Take the Maya, for example. Their towering pyramids in the dense jungles of Central America remain iconic symbols of a culture that once flourished. Their mastery in astronomy, agriculture, and architecture painted a picture of a thriving civilization. Yet, by the end of the 9th century, their cities were abandoned. The people who built these monumental structures, who created intricate calendars to track celestial movements, suddenly disappeared. What led to this sudden collapse? Was it a series of natural disasters, such as prolonged droughts? Or was there something deeper at play, something that remains hidden beneath the surface of recorded history? The same questions echo through the ruins of the Indus Valley. Unlike the Maya, whose cities can still be seen standing tall in parts, the cities of the Indus Valley are silent, abandoned, and enigmatic. At the peak of their civilization, the people of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa boasted advanced urban planning, a complex system of drainage, and a thriving trade network. But by 1500 BC, they, too, disappeared. Was it an invasion? Was it a massive shift in the climate, turning the once fertile plains into arid deserts? Or perhaps, was it something even more mysterious, something we may never fully understand? And then there are the Minoans, the mysterious seafaring people of ancient Crete. They built sprawling palaces adorned with vibrant frescoes, navigated the Mediterranean with unparalleled skill, and are even credited with laying the groundwork for Greek civilization. Yet, around 1450 BC, their civilization vanished. Some believe a catastrophic volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera played a role. Others suggest the invasions of the Mycenaeans might have been the cause. But, as with the Maya and the Indus Valley, no definitive explanation has ever emerged. The truth behind the fall of the Minoans remains as elusive as the shadowy outlines of their ancient cities. These stories are not isolated. Across the globe, in every corner of history, there are echoes of civilizations that once thrived, only to fall into obscurity. Empires that left behind monumental legacies, yet whose decline is shrouded in mystery. The question of why they disappeared is a question that lingers, inviting speculation and intrigue. Was it a natural disaster, a shift in political power, or perhaps an internal collapse, an unraveling that occurred from within? Or is the mystery far deeper, touching on elements of human history that are now lost to us forever? As we journey through the remnants of these ancient cultures, we must confront the possibility that some questions may never be answered. We are left with only fragments, archaeological findings, ancient texts, myths, and legends that offer tantalizing glimpses of these long-gone civilizations. Yet, despite our best efforts, the full story of their rise and fall remains just out of reach. But this mystery, this sense of the unknown, is what makes the story of these empires so captivating. It is the tension between what we know and what we do not know that keeps us intrigued. We are drawn to the great achievements of these civilizations, their art, their architecture, their innovations, but we are also captivated by the enigma of their disappearance. What forces were at play, and why do so many of these great cultures leave behind no clear answers? In a way, these vanished empires serve as a reminder of the fragility of human achievement. We look at the towering ruins of ancient cities and wonder how they could have stood for centuries, only to be swallowed up by the sands of time. The truth is, no civilization is immune to the forces of history. Even the greatest empires are vulnerable to decline, and sometimes the reasons for their fall remain a mystery, hidden in the depths of time, waiting to be uncovered. As we delve deeper into the story of these lost empires, we will explore the evidence left behind, piecing together the fragments of their history. We will examine the possible causes of their disappearance, whether it was natural disasters, invasions, internal conflicts, or a combination of factors. But we will also embrace the mystery, acknowledging that some answers may forever remain just out of our reach. The allure of these ancient empires lies not only in their accomplishments, but also in their mysteries. They remind us that, no matter how advanced we become, we are still subject to the unpredictable forces of nature, history, and time. The vanished empires that we will explore are more than just stories of the past. They are reflections of the fragile nature of all civilizations, including our own. So, as we journey through these tales of wonder and mystery, let us approach them with both curiosity and humility. For in the end, the disappearance of these empires is not just a mystery about them. It is a mystery about us. It is a reminder that history is written in the sand, and even the greatest of empires may one day vanish, leaving behind only whispers of their existence. And perhaps, as we ponder the fate of these lost civilizations, we will gain a deeper understanding of our place in the grand tapestry of time. From the dawn of human history, civilizations have emerged, flourished, and eventually declined, each following a pattern that seems almost inevitable. Whether it's the sprawling empires of the ancient world or the more localized city-states that dotted the landscapes of early human societies, the arc of civilization shares common threads. Societies are born, they grow, they reach the peak of their influence, and then, often mysteriously, they fade into the background of history. The question, then, is not if civilizations will rise and fall, but rather how and why it happens. At the heart of any civilization lies a simple, yet profound concept: the need to organize. The earliest human societies were not just scattered tribes living in the wild, but communities that learned to harness the land and its resources. They developed agriculture, built homes, formed social structures, and began to trade. These early stages of civilization weren't sudden. They were gradual, marked by incremental developments that allowed humanity to shift from a nomadic existence to a settled way of life. The first cities began to emerge, like those in Mesopotamia and the Nile Valley, where organized governance, religious practices, and trade networks began to lay the groundwork for what would become entire empires. As these early civilizations grew, so did their complexity. Trade routes expanded, bringing wealth and new ideas. The arts flourished, and monumental structures, temples, palaces, and pyramids began to the landscape. Great empires like Egypt, Sumer, and the Indus Valley rose to power, their influence reaching across vast stretches of land. The prosperity of these empires was, in many ways, built on a fine balance, one that included agriculture, innovation, political stability, and social order. But while these empires were thriving, they were also on the precipice of a fragile balance. The same factors that helped them succeed, their size, their reach, and their complexity, would ultimately contribute to their downfall. History is rich with stories of powerful empires that seemed invincible, yet crumbled when that delicate balance was disturbed. The ancient Egyptians, for example, were a civilization that lasted thousands of years, their culture enduring long past the reigns of their pharaohs. But as time passed, Egypt saw the rise and fall of many dynasties. The power of the pharaohs diminished, and outside invaders began to infiltrate the once mighty kingdom. The Egyptian civilization, which had so long withstood the tests of time, eventually faded, overtaken by foreign powers and internal conflict. The same can be said for the mighty Roman Empire, which, after centuries of dominance, fractured and dissolved. For all its might and grandeur, Rome fell victim to the very forces that had once built it. Decay from within, external invasions, and shifting power dynamics. But while these familiar tales of decline are widely known, they're only a part of a much broader pattern of civilizations that rose to power, only to fade into history without leaving much of a trace. It's not only the great empires of Europe, Africa, and Asia that experienced this ebb and flow. Even smaller, lesser-known societies, civilizations we might not even think of at first, followed similar arcs of rise and fall. Take the ancient city-states of Mesopotamia, for instance. These early urban centers, such as Ur and Babylon, saw their rise fueled by agriculture and innovation. Yet, with the rise of new powers, their cities eventually fell into ruin, their once thriving centers reduced to mere mounds of earth. Or consider the civilizations of the Andean highlands, like the Moche, who constructed sprawling pyramids and intricate ceramics. Over time, however, their cities were abandoned, their reasons for vanishing as enigmatic as their achievements. What's even more striking is that many of these civilizations didn't just fade gradually. Some of them vanished with startling speed, leaving behind only their bones, ruins, artifacts, and the faintest echoes of their once flourishing societies. The people who once walked the streets of these cities left no clear message behind. There were no official accounts of their demise, no warnings etched into stone or carved into the walls of their temples. They simply disappeared. For us, living in a modern world, it's easy to view the collapse of an empire as something that happens over centuries. But the truth is, many civilizations vanished in a matter of decades, their cities empty and their culture forgotten almost overnight. Consider, for example, the case of the Maya. The Maya Empire, with its vast cities, sophisticated calendars, and advanced understanding of astronomy, was one of the most remarkable civilizations of the ancient world. But by the time the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, many of their cities had already been abandoned, their once thriving populations reduced to mere remnants. What caused the Maya to abandon their cities? Was it the result of warfare, climate change, or something else entirely? Theories abound, but none of them fully explain the sudden, almost untraceable collapse of a civilization that had once seemed so robust. What makes these mysterious disappearances even more perplexing is the fact that many of these civilizations left behind impressive legacies. Architecture, art, technology that should have, in theory, allowed them to survive for generations. The sheer scale of their achievements suggests that they were capable of overcoming any challenge, yet time and again, they fell into ruin. It's almost as though something unseen, the forces of nature, internal upheaval, or even something more mysterious, erased these societies from history. As we look at these patterns, it's important to understand that the rise and fall of civilizations is not simply a matter of external forces like war or natural disaster. Sometimes the collapse begins from within. Political instability, economic decline, and social unrest often play a pivotal role in the downfall of great empires. It's easy to point to external factors, such as the invasions of foreign armies or the devastating effects of climate change. But in many cases, the internal weaknesses of these societies were just as significant. The inability to adapt to changing circumstances, whether due to a rigid social structure or an overextension of resources, could spell the end for even the most powerful empires. Moreover, the nature of the collapse itself often leaves historians grappling with incomplete records. In many cases, ancient civilizations didn't leave behind detailed accounts of their decline. Inscriptions that once recorded the great victories and triumphs of kings and rulers are often absent when it comes to documenting their demise. This gap in historical records is what has allowed so many of these civilizations to slip into the realm of mystery. Archaeologists, historians, and scholars are left to piece together the story of these empires based on fragments, ruins, inscriptions, and artifacts, often left with more questions than answers. Perhaps the most profound aspect of these disappearing civilizations is the realization that no society is immune to the forces of time. Even the most advanced civilizations, with their incredible achievements, are subject to the same natural laws and human failings as any other. The question of why some civilizations collapse so suddenly, while others linger for centuries, is a puzzle that remains unsolved. And as we look at the ruins of ancient cities, it's impossible not to wonder if the same forces that caused their decline could one day lead to our own downfall. In the end, the rise and fall of civilizations is both a universal truth and a deep mystery. It is a pattern that repeats itself throughout history, from the dawn of civilization to the present day. And though we may never fully understand why some societies disappear without a trace while others endure, one thing is certain. The forces that shaped these empires, whether natural, political, or cultural, are still at work today, continuing to mold the course of history. As we explore the stories of these vanished civilizations, we are reminded of the delicate balance that sustains any society and the unyielding passage of time that eventually erases all things. The Maya civilization, a remarkable society that once flourished in the dense jungles of Central America, stands as one of the most enigmatic cultures in human history. For centuries, the Maya were known for their advanced understanding of astronomy, their complex calendar systems, and their impressive architecture. Their cities, with towering pyramids and grand palaces, were marvels of engineering, standing as symbols of a thriving civilization that stretched across present-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. Yet despite their undeniable achievements, the Maya Empire ultimately vanished, leaving behind only crumbling ruins and unresolved mysteries. The rise of the Maya was marked by an extraordinary level of sophistication. Their cities were not just places of political and religious significance. They were vibrant centers of culture where art, science, and commerce converged. The Maya were masters of time, crafting calendars that were more accurate than any in the ancient world. Their knowledge of the stars, planets, and celestial cycles shaped their society, dictating the rhythms of life, from agriculture to religious ceremonies. The Maya built vast urban centers, such as Tikal, Copan, and Palenque, which were not only architectural feats, but also cultural hubs where thousands of people lived and worked. These cities, connected by complex networks of trade routes, were home to rulers, priests, artisans, and traders, each contributing to the vibrancy of Maya society. Yet, for all their brilliance, the Maya civilization began to experience a sudden and unexpected decline around the 9th century. The great cities, once bustling with life and activity, were abandoned. What happened to the Maya? Why did a civilization that had thrived for centuries, one that had built monumental structures and achieved feats in science and art that were ahead of its time, disappear without a trace? The mystery of the Maya collapse has puzzled historians and archaeologists for decades, and the theories surrounding their sudden disappearance are as varied as the civilizations they left behind. Some scholars point to environmental factors, suggesting that prolonged droughts could have devastated the region's agricultural economy. The Maya were highly dependent on rain-fed agriculture, and a long-term drought could have disrupted the delicate balance of their society. Without the water needed to sustain their crops, the Maya would have faced severe food shortages, which in turn could have led to social unrest and the eventual abandonment of their cities. Others believe that the collapse of the Maya civilization was linked to political instability. By the 9th century, the Maya world was fragmented into numerous city-states, each ruled by its own king. These city-states were often in conflict with one another, and wars between rival rulers were common. It's possible that internal warfare, driven by competition for resources and power, played a significant role in the downfall of the Maya. As cities fought for dominance, the cohesion of Maya society may have weakened, leading to the abandonment of urban centers and a breakdown of the social order. Still, there are other theories that suggest the cause of the collapse was more complex, perhaps a combination of environmental, political, and social factors. The Maya, after all, were not just fighting against droughts or warfare. They were also grappling with the inherent limitations of their own civilization. Their reliance on a rigid social hierarchy, which placed power in the hands of a few, may have made them more vulnerable to internal strife. The elite ruling class, which held control over the land and resources, could have failed to adapt to changing conditions, leaving the general population to bear the brunt of environmental disasters or military defeats. In this sense, the collapse of the Maya could have been a slow, internal unraveling, a societal fracture that was exacerbated by external pressures. Perhaps most fascinating of all, however, is the possibility that the Maya did not truly vanish at all. While many of the great cities were abandoned by the 9th century, the Maya did not disappear entirely. Small groups of Maya continued to live in the region, and by the time the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, the Maya had re-established themselves in other areas, though their previous glory was long gone. Some historians believe that the abandonment of the great cities might have been more of a strategic retreat than a complete collapse. Faced with environmental hardships and political chaos, the Maya may have moved away from their urban centers in search of more sustainable ways of life. These smaller settlements, often located in the more remote areas of the jungle, would have been more difficult to access and conquer, preserving the survival of the Maya culture, even if their cities no longer stood in the same grandeur. Even if the Maya didn't disappear entirely, the decline of their great cities remains one of history's greatest mysteries. What happened to those towering pyramids and magnificent temples? Why were they left behind, with no evidence of a catastrophic event like war or invasion? The fact that no single explanation can account for the collapse of such a sophisticated society makes the mystery even more compelling. Some have even suggested that the Maya were cursed, doomed by the gods for their arrogance or their failure to live in harmony with nature. Such theories, while intriguing, are difficult to prove, but they serve as a testament to the enduring allure of the Maya mystery, a mystery that continues to captivate both historians and the public alike. What's striking about the Maya collapse is not just the disappearance of their cities, but the silence that followed. Unlike other civilizations, which may have left behind detailed records of their downfall, the Maya left no such accounts. There are no written texts describing the fall of Tikal or Copan, no inscriptions recording the reasons behind the abandonment of their cities. Instead, we are left with only the remnants of their once great civilization, crumbling ruins, broken statues, and overgrown temples. It's as if the story of the Maya's decline was lost to time, leaving only unanswered questions. This absence of records, this gap in the historical narrative, is what makes the Maya collapse so intriguing. It's as though the civilization's disappearance was too sudden, too unexplainable for any written words to capture. And in many ways, this only adds to the allure of the Maya. Their mystery is not just in the causes of their collapse, but in the way they disappeared, quietly, almost without a sound, leaving behind only the shadows of their once great empire. Today, the ruins of the Maya cities stand as a testament to a civilization that once reached extraordinary heights. The pyramids of Tikal, the palaces of Palenque, and the temples of Copan are all reminders of a society that thrived for centuries, only to vanish almost overnight. These ruins are more than just historical artifacts. They're symbols of a lost world, a world whose mysteries may never be fully understood. And as we walk among the ruins, we are left to wonder, what happened to the Maya? Why did they vanish so suddenly, leaving behind only the silent echo of their greatness? In the end, the Maya's disappearance is a story that raises more questions than it answers. It is a story of a civilization that achieved remarkable things, only to fade away, leaving behind an empty silence. And that silence, like the ruins themselves, is part of the mystery that continues to captivate us. The Maya are gone, but their legacy endures in the ruins, in the calendars they created, and in the questions they left behind. The mystery of the Maya collapse is one that may never be fully solved, but it is a mystery that will continue to intrigue us, just as the ancient stones of their cities continue to stand silently in the jungle. In the vast expanse of the Indian subcontinent, long before the rise of the great empires of India, there thrived a civilization whose legacy remains as enigmatic as the ruins they left behind. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, flourished around 2500 BCE in what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwest India. Known for its remarkable urban planning, advanced engineering, and sophisticated social organization, the Indus Valley was a civilization that, much like the Maya, seemed poised to continue its growth for centuries. Yet by around 1500 BCE, it mysteriously faded into obscurity, leaving behind only the scattered remnants of a once great society. At its height, the Indus Valley was home to some of the most well-planned cities in the ancient world. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, the two major urban centers, were marvels of engineering. Their streets were laid out in a grid pattern, a level of urban planning that was far ahead of its time. The cities featured advanced drainage systems, with each house connected to a network of sewers, an innovation that would not be seen in many parts of the world for thousands of years. The people of the Indus Valley also developed a system of weights and measures that was highly standardized, suggesting a well-organized, centralized society. Yet, for all their brilliance, the people of the Indus Valley left no written records to explain their rise or fall. The script they developed remains undeciphered, and so much of what we know about their culture is based on what remains: artifacts, ruins, and the occasional inscriptions found on seals and pottery. These remnants tell us a great deal about their daily life, their trade networks, and their artistic achievements, but they offer little in the way of explanation for the civilization's mysterious disappearance. What happened to the Indus Valley civilization? Why did it disappear so suddenly, leaving behind such well-developed cities without any apparent signs of a catastrophic event? Theories abound, but none of them provide a definitive answer. Some scholars believe that environmental factors may have played a role in the decline of the Indus Valley. The region, though once fertile, began to see shifts in its climate, with evidence suggesting that the monsoon rains, which had sustained the agricultural base of the civilization, began to decline. A reduction in rainfall would have disrupted agriculture, leading to food shortages and, possibly, the eventual abandonment of the cities. Others point to the changing course of the rivers that sustained the region. The Indus River, which gave the civilization its name, experienced a number of shifts in its course over time. Such changes could have left the cities without reliable access to water, further exacerbating the environmental stress. As agriculture became more difficult, and as trade routes became harder to maintain, the once thriving cities of the Indus Valley may have begun to collapse under the weight of their own environmental fragility. But environmental factors alone don't seem to fully explain the decline of the Indus Valley. The civilization's sudden disappearance, seemingly without much of a struggle, raises questions that go beyond mere climate change or environmental challenges. Was there something more at play? Was there an internal collapse driven by political strife, economic failure, or social upheaval? The absence of clear evidence of warfare or invasion suggests that the collapse may have been more gradual than a single catastrophic event. Unlike the Maya, who left behind records of warfare and competition between city-states, the Indus Valley cities seem to have been abandoned quietly, without any apparent violence or external invasion. Could the collapse have been the result of social disintegration or political breakdown, with the people simply walking away from their cities, leaving behind no traces of their departure? Another possibility is that the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization was related to the movements of other peoples in the region. The Aryans, a nomadic group from the steppes of Central Asia, are believed to have migrated into the Indian subcontinent around the time the Indus Valley Civilization was in decline. Some historians have suggested that these migrations could have led to the disruption of the established order in the region, possibly contributing to the decline of the urban centers. However, there is no direct evidence linking the Aryans to the fall of the Indus Valley, and their arrival may have been a factor rather than a cause. What makes the disappearance of the Indus Valley particularly haunting is the sense of abruptness. The great cities, with their wide streets and impressive buildings, seem to have been abandoned in a manner that suggests something sudden, perhaps a series of shocks, both environmental and social, that led the people to simply walk away from their once prosperous centers of life. But unlike other civilizations that left behind stories of their fall, the Indus Valley left no such narrative. There are no texts, no inscriptions, no accounts from survivors or invaders that might shed light on what caused the civilization to fade into history. The silence is deafening, and it's this lack of explanation that fuels the ongoing mystery. In recent years, some researchers have suggested that the decline of the Indus Valley may have been more complex than we once thought. The idea of a single cause for the collapse may be too simplistic. Instead, it's possible that a combination of environmental shifts, resource depletion, and internal social strife created a perfect storm of factors that led to the civilization's slow and steady collapse. The lack of a clear and dramatic cause, no earthquakes, no invasions, no major wars, makes the fall of the Indus Valley all the more unsettling. It suggests that even the most advanced and seemingly stable civilizations can vanish, not with a bang, but with a whisper. The ruins of the Indus Valley civilization still stand today, as silent witnesses to a lost world. In Mohenjo-daro, the ancient streets and buildings remain, half buried in the sand, their original purpose now a mystery. The seals and artifacts found at these sites speak of a people who were highly skilled in trade, arts, and governance. Yet we are left with no clear understanding of why they abandoned everything they had built. As archaeologists continue to dig through the layers of earth, they uncover more pieces of the puzzle, but the full picture remains elusive. The civilization, once vibrant and full of life, seems to have vanished without leaving a single, definitive answer to its demise. In the end, the story of the Indus Valley is one of unanswered questions. It is a tale of a civilization that reached great heights, creating urban centers that were ahead of their time, developing technologies and systems that influenced later societies, but which, despite all its advancements, left behind no clear explanation for its sudden decline. The ruins of the Indus Valley stand as a testament to the fragility of human civilization and a reminder that, no matter how advanced we become, we are always vulnerable to the unpredictable forces of nature, politics, and time. And as we contemplate the quiet remains of the Indus Valley, we are left to wonder, what caused the people of this great civilization to vanish? What story lies hidden in the dust, waiting to be uncovered? In the shimmering blue waters of the Aegean Sea, nestled on the island of Crete, once stood a civilization that captivated the imagination of historians and archaeologists for centuries. The Minoans, whose name is derived from the legendary King Minos, were one of the earliest and most influential cultures of the ancient Mediterranean. Flourishing from around 2000 BCE to 1450 BCE, the Minoans built a society that was sophisticated, vibrant, and highly advanced for its time. They were seafaring people, mastering the art of navigation and trade across the vast Mediterranean. Their palaces, most notably the one at Knossos, were architectural marvels, and their frescoes, pottery, and artwork displayed a deep understanding of beauty and culture. Yet, for all their brilliance, the Minoans vanished from the historical record with remarkable suddenness, leaving behind a legacy that continues to intrigue and puzzle us. The Minoans' accomplishments were numerous. They were pioneers in art, crafting delicate pottery, intricate jewelry, and elaborate frescoes that adorned the walls of their palaces. Their art was vibrant and detailed, depicting scenes of nature, religious rituals, and daily life. The Minoans were also highly skilled in architecture, and the palace at Knossos, comprising numerous levels, courtyards, and corridors, was a testament to their engineering ingenuity. The Minoan palaces were not merely royal residences. They were centers of commerce, administration, and religion, serving as hubs for the distribution of goods throughout the Mediterranean. The Minoans had a vast network of trade routes that connected them with Egypt, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and even distant lands like the Levant. Their wealth, derived from the thriving trade of olive oil, wine, and precious metals, allowed them to build a flourishing civilization that seemed poised for greatness. The Minoans' expertise in seafaring made them the dominant maritime power in the Aegean, and their naval fleets were essential to their prosperity. Their influence spread across the Mediterranean, leaving traces of Minoan culture in distant lands, from Egypt to the Cyclades. But despite their dominance and reach, the Minoans never seemed to expand into a true empire. Instead, they remained a loose collection of city-states, each with its own ruler, but united by a common language, culture, and religious practices. Their art, written script, known as Linear A, and religious iconography suggest a society that was not only advanced in technology, but also rich in spiritual and cultural depth. Yet, despite these extraordinary achievements, the Minoans disappeared from the historical scene around 1450 BCE, and their fall remains one of the great mysteries of the ancient world. The reasons behind their sudden decline have been the subject of much debate, but no single explanation has proven definitive. One of the most widely discussed theories points to the eruption of the Thera volcano, which occurred around 1600 BCE on the nearby island of Santorini. This catastrophic event released massive amounts of ash and pumice into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun and causing climate disruptions across the region. The eruption itself may have caused immediate damage to Minoan coastal settlements, and the fallout from the eruption may have led to widespread crop failures and social unrest. The eruption of Thera, while devastating, may not have been the sole cause of the Minoans' decline. In the centuries following the eruption, evidence suggests that the Minoans continued to thrive in many parts of Crete. However, by around 1450 BCE, the palaces at Knossos and other Minoan centers began to show signs of destruction and abandonment. Some scholars believe that the Minoans faced an external threat in the form of invaders. One theory suggests that the Mycenaeans, a rising Greek civilization from the mainland, may have invaded Crete, taking advantage of the Minoans' weakened state after the Thera eruption. The Mycenaeans were known to have expanded their territory around this time, and their rise to power could have led to the eventual downfall of the Minoan civilization. Other theories, however, suggest that the Minoan collapse was not the result of an external invasion, but rather the result of internal factors. Political instability, perhaps exacerbated by the disruption caused by the volcanic eruption, could have led to a breakdown in the centralized authority that had governed Minoan society. The palaces of Crete, which had once been the focal points of administration and power, were now abandoned, and evidence suggests that the Minoans moved away from their urban centers, seeking refuge in smaller, more fortified settlements. This shift may have marked the beginning of the end for the Minoan civilization, as the once prosperous society fragmented and disappeared. Some have even suggested that the collapse of the Minoans was a result of environmental factors, including a long-term decline in the fertility of the soil. The island of Crete, while rich in natural resources, may have faced challenges in sustaining its population as agricultural practices became less effective over time. The Minoans were heavily reliant on agriculture, and any significant changes in the climate or environment could have disrupted their food supply, contributing to social unrest and the eventual abandonment of their cities. The abruptness with which the Minoans vanished is perhaps the most perplexing aspect of their decline. Unlike many other ancient civilizations, the Minoans left behind little in the way of written records to explain their fall. Their written script, Linear A, has never been deciphered, and as a result, we are left with only physical evidence, ruins, frescoes, and artifacts, to piece together the story of their rise and fall. The lack of a clear narrative surrounding their decline makes it difficult to understand exactly what happened to this once flourishing society. What makes the disappearance of the Minoans all the more intriguing is the way in which their culture and influence persisted even after their civilization had collapsed. The Mycenaeans, who absorbed much of Minoan culture, continued to reference Minoan art, architecture, and religious practices. In many ways, the legacy of the Minoans lived on, though the civilization itself had been lost to time. The palaces of Knossos, once the heart of Minoan society, were gradually overtaken by nature, and over the centuries they became the stuff of legend, their history obscured by myth and speculation. Even today, the Minoans continue to captivate the imagination. The island of Crete, with its ancient ruins, is a place of mystery and wonder, drawing visitors from around the world who come to experience the remnants of a civilization that flourished long before the rise of ancient Greece. The story of the Minoans is a reminder of the fragility of human achievement and how even the greatest civilizations can fade into history, leaving behind only the faintest traces of their once glorious existence. The disappearance of the Minoans is a testament to the impermanence of even the most powerful civilizations. Despite their remarkable achievements in art, architecture, and seafaring, the Minoans were ultimately undone by forces beyond their control. Whether it was the eruption of Thera, the rise of the Mycenaeans, or internal social unrest, their civilization disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only the ruins of their once great cities and the unanswered question of why they vanished so suddenly. And as we gaze upon the ruins of Knossos and the other Minoan sites, we are left with a haunting question. Could such a fate await all civilizations, no matter how advanced they become? Will time eventually swallow even our greatest achievements, leaving only echoes of their former glory? In the arid deserts of the American Southwest, nestled among the dramatic cliff faces and vast canyons, once lived a people whose legacy endures in the ruins they left behind. The Anasazi, also known as the ancestral Puebloans, were a civilization that thrived for centuries in what is now the Four Corners region of the United States, a land where the harsh desert environment tested the limits of human survival and ingenuity. The Anasazi built impressive cities, often high in the cliffs or in the sheltered valleys, their stone dwellings and elaborate architecture a testament to their advanced knowledge of construction, agriculture, and social organization. Yet, by the end of the 13th century, the Anasazi civilization had mysteriously vanished. Their cities were abandoned, their culture seemingly wiped from the earth, leaving behind only the silent ruins of their once thriving communities. The rise of the Anasazi civilization is a story of human adaptation and resilience. The Anasazi, who lived in an environment where water was scarce and the land was harsh, developed sophisticated agricultural practices to sustain themselves. They cultivated crops like corn, beans, and squash, utilizing complex irrigation systems to channel water from nearby rivers into their fields. The ability to thrive in such an unforgiving landscape was a remarkable feat, and the Anasazi's agricultural success allowed them to build permanent settlements in places where other groups might have struggled to survive. Over time, the Anasazi built elaborate dwellings, many of which were constructed into the cliffs of canyons. These cliff dwellings, such as those at Cliff Palace in Mesa Verde, were ingeniously designed, offering protection from the elements and from potential threats. The Anasazi also built large multi-room structures known as great houses, which served as communal spaces for living and working. These buildings were often constructed with intricate masonry, and the sheer scale of their design suggests a highly organized society. The Anasazi were also skilled in pottery, weaving, and jewelry making, and their trade networks extended across the region, with goods being exchanged between communities and tribes. However, despite their technological prowess and cultural achievements, the Anasazi began to face a series of challenges in the late 12th and early 13th centuries. These challenges, though difficult to pinpoint precisely, may have contributed to the civilization's eventual decline and disappearance. The most commonly cited factor in the Anasazi collapse is a prolonged period of drought. Like many ancient civilizations, the Anasazi were highly dependent on the availability of water, and any disruption to the region's water supply would have had devastating consequences for their agricultural practices. Evidence from tree rings and other sources suggests that the American Southwest experienced a severe drought around the time of the Anasazi's decline, and it is believed that this may have led to crop failures, food shortages, and a breakdown of the society's delicate balance. This period of drought likely put tremendous stress on the Anasazi people. Their agricultural systems, once the foundation of their civilization, would have been unable to support the growing population. The resulting food scarcity may have caused social unrest, with communities fighting over the remaining resources. The Anasazi were not a monolithic society, but rather a collection of various pueblos and groups, each with its own leadership and social organization. The strain of environmental stress could have contributed to internal divisions, weakening the cohesion of the society. At the same time, the Anasazi were facing external pressures. The region was inhabited by numerous other Native American groups, and there were likely tensions between the Anasazi and these neighboring tribes. Archaeological evidence points to signs of conflict, including defensive walls and evidence of warfare, suggesting that the Anasazi may have been engaged in territorial disputes. As resources became scarcer, these conflicts may have escalated, further destabilizing the society. Perhaps one of the most haunting aspects of the Anasazi's decline is the suddenness with which they disappeared from their cliff dwellings and large communities. By the late 13th century, many of the great houses and cliff dwellings were abandoned. Some scholars suggest that the Anasazi people may have been forced to migrate due to the combined pressures of drought, food scarcity, and conflict. The Anasazi did not disappear entirely, however. Evidence shows that many of them relocated to areas further south, in places like the Rio Grande Valley, where water was more abundant. These migrations suggest that the Anasazi were able to adapt, though their once great civilization had been reduced to smaller, more isolated communities. The abandonment of the Anasazi cities, however, left behind a legacy that continues to capture the imagination of modern-day explorers and historians. The ruins of places like Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde stand as haunting reminders of the civilization's grandeur. The cliff dwellings, in particular, are awe-inspiring, their construction a marvel of engineering. But beyond their impressive architecture, these ruins also speak of a culture that was connected to the land in a profound way. The Anasazi did not simply build cities. They built them in harmony with their environment, making use of the natural landscape for protection, sustenance, and spiritual connection. Despite the many archaeological digs that have been conducted at Anasazi sites, much about their culture remains a mystery. The Anasazi left behind no written records, and their language and oral traditions have not been preserved. As a result, much of what we know about the Anasazi comes from the study of their material culture, pottery, tools, and the remains of their dwellings. These artifacts tell us a great deal about their way of life, but they do not answer the most pressing questions about why the Anasazi disappeared. Was it purely environmental factors that caused their decline, or was there something more at play, perhaps social or political factors that we cannot yet fully comprehend? One of the most intriguing aspects of the Anasazi collapse is the fact that their disappearance was not the result of conquest or invasion. Unlike the Maya or the Roman Empire, the Anasazi did not fall victim to an external enemy. There are no signs of widespread violence or destruction, and there are no accounts of foreign invaders sacking their cities. Instead, the Anasazi seem to have faded from the historical record, their cities abandoned and their way of life lost to time. In many ways, this quiet disappearance is more unsettling than the violent ends faced by other civilizations. It suggests that even a society as advanced as the Anasazi could not withstand the harsh forces of nature, internal divisions, and external pressures. Today, the ruins of the Anasazi are a testament to human resilience and the fragility of civilization. As we explore the remnants of their cities, we are reminded of the delicate balance that sustains any society. The Anasazi, like many civilizations before them, thrive for a time, only to be undone by forces beyond their control. The mystery of their disappearance continues to fascinate archaeologists, and the ruins they left behind continue to speak to us, offering a glimpse into a vanished world. As we walk among the ruins of the Anasazi, we are reminded of the fleeting nature of human achievement. Even the most impressive civilizations, with their remarkable innovations and enduring legacies, are vulnerable to the passage of time. The Anasazi may have disappeared into the sands of the desert, but their story lives on, not only in the ruins they left behind, but in the lessons we can learn from their rise and fall. Long before the mighty Maya, the towering Aztecs, or the sophisticated civilizations of the Andes, there was a culture whose impact reverberated across the landscape of ancient Mesoamerica. The Olmecs, often considered the mother culture of Mesoamerica, emerged around 1200 BCE in what is now southern Mexico. Though they left behind only the faintest traces of their civilization, their influence on the cultures that followed was immense. The Olmecs are credited with laying the foundations of many of the region's later achievements, from the creation of monumental stone heads to the development of writing systems. Yet they too disappeared from the historical record, leaving behind only mysterious remnants and unanswered questions. The Olmecs were one of the first civilizations in the Americas to develop a complex society. They built large ceremonial centers, such as those found at San Lorenzo and La Venta, where they constructed impressive pyramids, plazas, and temples. The most iconic remnants of the Olmec civilization, however, are the colossal stone heads that have become their hallmark. These massive sculptures, some weighing several tons and standing up to 10 feet tall, represent the Olmec rulers and display intricate facial features, likely meant to symbolize both power and divine authority. The heads are often regarded as one of the most remarkable achievements of early Mesoamerican art, showcasing the Olmecs' advanced understanding of sculpture and their ability to transport large stone blocks over great distances. But while the colossal heads are undeniably striking, they're only part of the Olmec legacy. The Olmecs were pioneers in many ways, developing complex systems of trade, agriculture, and even writing. They were skilled farmers, cultivating crops like maize, beans, and squash in the fertile lowlands of the Gulf Coast. Their ability to harness the land and sustain their growing population played a crucial role in the development of their cities. The Olmecs also engaged in long-distance trade, exchanging goods like jade, obsidian, and feathers with neighboring regions. This network of trade helped spread their cultural and technological innovations across Mesoamerica, influencing later civilizations, including the Maya and the Aztecs. Perhaps one of the most fascinating aspects of the Olmec civilization was their early use of a written language. Although the Olmec script remains undeciphered, scholars have found symbols and glyphs on stone monuments and pottery that suggest they were among the first in Mesoamerica to develop a form of writing. This script, along with their advanced calendar systems, hints at the sophistication of their culture and their influence on later civilizations in the region. Despite the significance of these accomplishments, very little is known about the Olmecs as a people. Their language and much of their culture remain shrouded in mystery, and there are no written records left by the Olmecs themselves to explain the rise and fall of their civilization. The decline of the Olmec civilization, like many others in history, is a topic of considerable debate among archaeologists and historians. While the Olmecs were a dominant force in Mesoamerica for several centuries, their civilization seemed to have undergone a dramatic collapse by around 400 BCE. Their major urban centers, including San Lorenzo and La Venta, were abandoned, and the once great ceremonial complexes were left in ruins. There are no clear signs of invasion or warfare to explain the fall of the Olmec, and the absence of written records leaves many questions unanswered. What caused the Olmec civilization to fade so suddenly? Was it internal factors, such as political instability or social unrest, or were there environmental forces at play that led to their disappearance? One theory points to environmental factors, particularly the impact of changing climate conditions on the Olmec's agricultural base. The region where the Olmecs thrived was susceptible to flooding, and some scholars suggest that a series of catastrophic floods or prolonged droughts may have disrupted the food supply and led to the abandonment of their cities. Additionally, the Olmec's reliance on river systems for transportation and irrigation may have made them particularly vulnerable to environmental shifts, such as changes in the course of the rivers or the depletion of soil fertility. Another theory suggests that the Olmec civilization may have experienced internal turmoil, with political instability and social unrest contributing to their downfall. Like many early civilizations, the Olmecs were likely governed by powerful rulers or elite families who controlled access to resources and wealth. If these elites became increasingly corrupt, or if conflicts arose between competing factions, the result could have been the collapse of the social order and the abandonment of the cities. Some researchers speculate that the Olmecs may have suffered from the very complexities they had built into their society: power struggles, class divisions, and over-reliance on a few key trade routes and agricultural practices. These pressures could have led to internal collapse, leaving their once thriving cities to decay. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the Olmec disappearance is the lack of clear evidence to support any single theory. There were no massive invasions, no catastrophic earthquakes, no sudden collapse of the entire civilization. Instead, the Olmec civilization seems to have faded quietly, its major centers abandoned over time. The gradual nature of their disappearance, combined with the absence of written records, has left the Olmecs cloaked in mystery, and their story remains one of the great unanswered questions of pre-Columbian history. Despite their relatively short period of prominence, the Olmecs left an indelible mark on the civilizations that followed them. Their monumental stone heads, with their enigmatic expressions, continue to captivate people to this day, and their cultural and technological achievements laid the foundation for later Mesoamerican civilizations. The Maya, the Zapotecs, and the Aztecs all drew inspiration from Olmec traditions, incorporating elements of Olmec art, religion, and political organization into their own societies. The Olmec influence can be seen in the construction of monumental architecture, the use of calendar systems, and the development of complex religious iconography in these later civilizations. Today, the Olmec civilization is largely remembered through the remnants they left behind. The colossal heads, as well as the smaller stone carvings and artifacts found at archaeological sites, continue to inspire awe and curiosity. Yet for all that has been uncovered, much of their culture remains a mystery. Who were the Olmecs? What drove them to build such magnificent cities and then abandon them so suddenly? Why did they leave behind such powerful works of art, but no written records of their history? These questions remain unanswered, and perhaps they always will. The Olmecs, like so many ancient civilizations, remain shrouded in the mist of time, their story a tantalizing enigma that continues to captivate those who seek to understand the forces that shaped the ancient world. As we reflect on the Olmecs, we are reminded of the fragility of civilization. They, like the Maya, the Anasazi, and others, were pioneers in their own right, creating something remarkable, only for it to fade away, leaving behind only the silent testimony of their achievements. The Olmecs, with their monumental stone heads and their advanced cultural systems, offer us a glimpse into a world long gone, one that still holds many secrets and whose story continues to beckon us into the past, urging us to uncover the mysteries they left behind. In the heart of the desert, amidst the scorching heat and seemingly barren landscapes of the Middle East, there once thrived a remarkable civilization that mastered the art of survival, trade, and architecture. The Nabateans, an ancient people who flourished from around the 4th century BCE to the 2nd century CE, were the architects of one of the most mysterious and impressive desert empires of antiquity. Known primarily for their stunning rock-cut city of Petra, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that continues to awe visitors today, the Nabateans created a thriving empire by mastering the trade routes that spanned the vast stretches of the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. Yet, much like the cities they carved into the cliffs, their civilization gradually faded into the sands of time, leaving behind more questions than answers about their sudden disappearance. The Nabateans were a people of great adaptability. Living in the harsh, arid deserts of what is now Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and parts of Syria and Israel, they turned a hostile environment into a thriving trade hub. At the heart of their empire was the city of Petra, a stunning urban complex carved directly into the rock faces of the region's mountains. Petra, with its iconic treasury, Al-Khazna, intricate tombs, and vast network of water channels, was not only a remarkable feat of engineering, but also a symbol of the Nabatean ability to harmonize with their environment. The city was an oasis in the desert, where an intricate system of water management and cisterns allowed the Nabateans to thrive even in the driest of conditions. The city's location at the crossroads of major trade routes, connecting the Mediterranean to the Arabian Peninsula, enabled the Nabateans to dominate trade, especially in spices, incense, frankincense, myrrh, and other valuable goods. The Nabateans were skilled merchants, and their trade networks stretched across vast distances. They controlled key trade routes that passed through the Arabian Desert, linking the eastern Mediterranean to the Arabian Gulf and the Indian subcontinent. This gave them access to goods from distant lands, which they traded with the Greeks, Romans, and Egyptians. The Nabateans also traded in luxury goods, and their knowledge of the desert terrain allowed them to navigate routes that others could not. The trade in spices, incense, and precious metals was the lifeblood of their economy, and their strategic control over these routes brought great wealth and influence to their kingdom. However, the Nabateans were more than just successful traders. They were also skilled in the arts of governance, architecture, and irrigation. The city of Petra stands as the ultimate testament to their ingenuity. The Nabateans developed a sophisticated system of water storage and distribution, utilizing channels, dams, and cisterns to capture and store the scarce rainfall and flash floods that occasionally swept through the region. Their ability to create an oasis in one of the most arid environments on Earth is a remarkable feat of engineering, and their advanced knowledge of hydrology allowed them to transform Petra into a thriving metropolis, supporting a population of thousands. In terms of architecture, the Nabateans were also pioneers. Their rock-cut structures, including elaborate tombs, temples, and homes, showcase their mastery of both design and construction. The Treasury, one of Petra's most famous buildings, is a stunning example of Nabatean architecture, with its grand facade carved into the face of the rock. The city's narrow streets, intricate facades, and impressive structures reflect the Nabateans' artistic and architectural achievements, which blended local traditions with influences from neighboring cultures, such as the Greeks, Egyptians, and Persians. Yet, for all their accomplishments, the Nabatean civilization gradually declined, and by the 2nd century CE, their empire was absorbed into the Roman Empire. The decline of the Nabateans has puzzled historians, as there is no single event or cause that can explain their disappearance. One possibility is that the changing dynamics of trade routes played a role. As the Roman Empire expanded and control over the region strengthened, the Nabateans' monopoly on trade routes was gradually undermined. The Romans, who had their own vast empire and trade networks, began to bypass the traditional Nabatean routes, making Petra and other Nabatean cities less economically significant. Additionally, the political landscape of the time may have contributed to the Nabateans' decline. As the Romans gained more control over the region, the once independent Nabatean kingdom was incorporated into the Roman Empire in 106 CE. While the Nabateans continued to maintain some degree of autonomy for a time, the political and military power of the Romans eventually overshadowed them. Roman influence brought about significant changes to the region, and Petra, once the heart of Nabatean power, was slowly integrated into the broader Roman system. Another factor that may have contributed to the Nabateans' decline is environmental change. The very climate that had once allowed the Nabateans to thrive, through their mastery of water management, could have eventually turned against them. Evidence suggests that during the Roman period, there were significant shifts in the region's climate, including changes in rainfall patterns and a general decline in agricultural productivity. The Nabateans, who had relied on the delicate balance of water and agriculture to support their city, may have found it increasingly difficult to sustain their population and way of life. Droughts, changes in desert ecology, and declining crop yields could have led to the gradual abandonment of Petra and other cities. As the Nabateans became part of the Roman Empire, they also faced cultural and societal changes that may have contributed to the erosion of their distinct identity. The Romans introduced their own architecture, customs, and religious practices, and the Nabateans, once a people fiercely independent and skilled in their trade, may have found it increasingly difficult to maintain their unique way of life. The blending of Roman and Nabatean cultures may have led to the gradual erosion of the distinctiveness of the Nabatean civilization as the Romans imposed their influence on the region. Despite their eventual absorption into the Roman Empire, the legacy of the Nabateans endures, most notably in the city of Petra. Today, Petra is one of the most iconic archaeological sites in the world, attracting millions of visitors each year who come to marvel at its breathtaking rock-cut architecture and sophisticated engineering. The city's tombs, temples, and monuments continue to stand as a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of the Nabatean people. The art of desert survival, the mastery of trade, and the legacy of Petra remain an indelible part of the region's history. The Nabateans, with their remarkable achievements in trade, architecture, and engineering, left an enduring mark on the ancient world. Yet, much like the civilization itself, the story of their disappearance remains shrouded in mystery. The reasons for their decline are complex and multifaceted, shaped by the ebb and flow of trade, politics, and climate. What is clear, however, is that the Nabateans were a civilization that thrived in the face of adversity, mastering the desert and creating a powerful empire that continues to capture the imagination. Their ability to carve a city out of rock, to control the flow of trade, and to survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth stands as a testament to their remarkable resilience and ingenuity. Even in their disappearance, they have left us with a city that remains, a place where the past whispers through the stones, inviting us to uncover the secrets of a once great civilization. In the ancient world, few empires were as influential as the Hittites, a civilization that rose to prominence in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, and became one of the dominant powers of the ancient Near East. The Hittites flourished from the 17th century BCE to around the 12th century BCE, a period during which they not only shaped the political landscape of the region, but also influenced the cultures and peoples that surrounded them. They were formidable warriors, skilled diplomats, and master builders, leaving behind a legacy that would echo through the corridors of history. Yet, despite their might and influence, the Hittite Empire mysteriously collapsed around 1200 BCE, leaving behind a vast array of questions about the reasons for their sudden fall and the fate of their civilization. The Hittite Empire was a complex and highly organized society, centered in the heart of Anatolia. Its capital, Hattusa, located near the modern Turkish town of Boğazkale, was a marvel of ancient engineering. The city, which flourished from the 16th century BCE until its abandonment in the 12th century BCE, was surrounded by massive stone walls, which included elaborate gates and fortifications. The city's architecture, with its intricate layout of temples, palaces, and residential areas, attests to the Hittite skill in both urban planning and construction. But it was not only their architecture that stood out. The Hittites were also known for their legal and governmental systems, which were among the most sophisticated of the ancient world. They had a well-established bureaucracy, and their legal code was remarkably advanced, with provisions that addressed everything from property disputes to criminal law. The Hittites were also skilled diplomats. At a time when warfare was a common method of resolving disputes, the Hittites developed a sophisticated system of treaties and alliances, which allowed them to maintain peace with some of their neighbors, such as Egypt. One of the most famous examples of Hittite diplomacy is the peace treaty signed between the Hittite king Hattusili III and the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II, following the Battle of Kadesh around 1274 BC. This treaty, one of the oldest surviving international agreements, marked the end of a long-standing conflict and established a lasting peace between two of the most powerful empires of the time. The treaty not only cemented the Hittites' status as a major power in the ancient world, but also demonstrated their ability to negotiate and maintain stable relations with other great powers. The Hittites were also military innovators, particularly in their use of chariotry. They developed advanced techniques for chariot warfare, which gave them a significant advantage over many of their contemporaries. The Hittite chariots, which were lighter and faster than those of other civilizations, allowed their armies to outmaneuver their enemies and achieve victories in battle. This military prowess enabled the Hittites to expand their territory, establishing a powerful empire that stretched from the Aegean Sea to Mesopotamia and from the Taurus Mountains to the Euphrates River. Despite their military successes and diplomatic achievements, the Hittite Empire began to show signs of decline by the late 13th century BCE. The reasons for the fall of the Hittites are still debated by historians, but several factors may have contributed to their sudden collapse. One possible explanation is the invasion of the so-called Sea Peoples, a mysterious group of marauding tribes that swept through the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BCE, attacking and destroying many of the great cities of the ancient world, including Hittite cities. While the exact identity of the Sea Peoples remains unknown, their invasions are believed to have contributed to the downfall of several ancient civilizations, including the Hittites. The Hittites may have also been weakened by internal strife. By the time of the empire's collapse, the Hittite royal family was divided, and the kingdom was plagued by succession disputes and power struggles. These internal conflicts may have made it difficult for the Hittites to respond effectively to external threats, such as the Sea Peoples or the growing power of neighboring civilizations. In addition to political instability, the Hittite economy may have been strained by prolonged warfare and the demands of maintaining an empire. The resources needed to support the Hittite military and administrative apparatus may have taken a toll on the empire's economy, contributing to its eventual collapse. Another possible cause of the Hittite decline was environmental factors. The 12th century BCE was a period of significant upheaval across the ancient world, and climate change may have played a role in destabilizing the region. Evidence from tree rings and other climate data suggests that there was a period of prolonged drought during this time, which could have affected the agricultural base of the Hittite Empire. If crop yields diminished due to adverse weather conditions, it would have strained the economy and led to food shortages, potentially exacerbating internal unrest. By around 1200 BCE, the Hittite capital of Hattusa was abandoned, and the once great empire fragmented into smaller, independent city-states. While some Hittite cities continued to exist in the aftermath of the empire's fall, they were no longer able to maintain the power or cohesion of their former empire. The Hittite language and culture, however, did not entirely disappear. Hittite-speaking peoples lived on in smaller kingdoms, and elements of Hittite culture persisted in the region for centuries after the collapse of the empire. In fact, the Hittite language continued to be used for several hundred years by the Neo-Hittite states that emerged in the aftermath of the empire's fall. What remains of the Hittite Empire today is primarily archaeological evidence, including the ruins of Hattusa, the city's monumental gates, and the remains of its temples and palaces. The Hittites left behind a rich legacy of written records, including royal inscriptions, diplomatic letters, and legal codes, many of which have been discovered in recent decades. These texts, written in cuneiform on clay tablets, offer valuable insights into Hittite society, culture, and governance. In particular, the Hittite laws, which covered everything from property rights to the treatment of slaves, provide a window into the values and priorities of the Hittite people. The fact that much of Hittite literature, including their extensive royal archives, survived the collapse of the empire suggests that their culture had a lasting impact on the region. Despite their eventual fall, the Hittites played a crucial role in shaping the ancient Near East. Their innovations in law, diplomacy, and warfare influenced many of the civilizations that followed them, including the Assyrians, Persians, and Greeks. Their ability to navigate complex political landscapes, maintain peaceful relations with neighboring powers, and dominate trade routes left an indelible mark on the region. Though the Hittite Empire itself may have disappeared, the legacy of the Hittites lives on in the records they left behind and in the impact they had on the civilizations that succeeded them. The fall of the Hittite Empire remains a subject of fascination for historians and archaeologists. The precise causes of their sudden collapse are still debated, and it is likely that multiple factors, such as invasions, internal strife, and environmental change, contributed to the empire's downfall. Yet, the story of the Hittites serves as a poignant reminder of the fragility of even the most powerful civilizations. Despite their military prowess, advanced legal systems, and diplomatic achievements, the Hittites were ultimately undone by forces beyond their control. And as we look back on the ruins of Hattusa and the artifacts they left behind, we are reminded that no empire, no matter how great, is impervious to the inexorable passage of time. Long before the grandeur of Athens, Sparta, and the classical Greek world, there existed an empire whose name still echoes through the annals of history. The Mycenaeans, a civilization that flourished between the 16th and 12th centuries BCE, were the forebears of classical Greek culture. Their cities, palaces, and art were legendary, and their military prowess and extensive trade networks left an indelible mark on the ancient world. But, as with so many ancient civilizations, the Mycenaeans' power came to a sudden and dramatic end, leaving behind only the remnants of their cities, their stories woven into myth, and an enduring mystery about what led to their sudden disappearance. At the height of their civilization, the Mycenaeans controlled much of mainland Greece, as well as parts of the Aegean Islands and even the coast of Anatolia. Their most famous site, Mycenae, was a sprawling city surrounded by massive defensive walls, which gave rise to the famous term Cyclopean walls, due to the enormous stones used in construction. These walls, which still stand today, are a testament to the Mycenaeans' advanced engineering techniques and their need for protection from both external threats and internal strife. The Mycenaean palaces were not only centers of power and administration, but also hubs for art, culture, and religion, with grand halls adorned with frescoes and elaborate artifacts that displayed their wealth and artistic sophistication. The Mycenaeans were also formidable warriors, and their military exploits were legendary. The image of the Mycenaean warrior, clad in bronze armor and wielding a spear, has been immortalized in both history and myth, notably in Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey. These works, while mythological in nature, draw heavily on the real-world experiences of the Mycenaeans, particularly their wars with Troy. The so-called Trojan War, which was immortalized in the Iliad, may have been based on a real conflict, though the precise historical details are shrouded in legend. Whether or not the war itself occurred exactly as described in the epic, the Mycenaeans' prowess in battle is clear. They controlled a vast network of trade routes, and their influence extended well beyond Greece, reaching into Egypt, Mesopotamia, and even the distant lands of the eastern Mediterranean. The Mycenaean economy was largely based on trade, with the Mycenaeans exporting olive oil, wine, and other goods while importing valuable resources like timber, metals, and luxury items. This network of commerce connected the Mycenaeans to the broader Mediterranean world, allowing them to amass great wealth and power. However, it was not only through trade that the Mycenaeans thrived. They were also skilled in agriculture, employing advanced techniques to cultivate the land and sustain their growing population. The palaces they built, with their grand halls, storerooms, and administrative centers, reflect the centralization of power and the importance of managing resources and trade. Despite their remarkable achievements, the Mycenaean civilization began to experience a decline in the 13th century BCE. The reasons for this collapse remain a subject of intense scholarly debate. One prominent theory points to the invasion of foreign tribes, often referred to as the Dorian invasions, which may have caused the Mycenaeans to lose control of their territories. The Dorians, a Greek-speaking group, are believed to have moved into Greece from the north, pushing the Mycenaeans out of their cities and destroying their palaces. The archaeological record, however, offers no direct evidence of a large-scale invasion, and many scholars argue that the decline was likely the result of a combination of factors rather than a single invasion. Environmental factors may also have played a significant role in the downfall of the Mycenaeans. Evidence from tree rings, pollen samples, and other environmental data suggest that the Mediterranean experienced a period of severe droughts and climate change during the late 13th and early 12th centuries BCE. These environmental shifts could have led to crop failures, which would have placed significant strain on the Mycenaean economy, particularly given the civilization's reliance on agricultural productivity. The resulting food shortages could have led to social unrest, weakening the Mycenaean cities from within. In addition to these environmental and external pressures, internal strife and political instability may have contributed to the collapse of the Mycenaean civilization. The palaces, once the center of Mycenaean power, were abandoned, and evidence of violent destruction is found at many sites, including Mycenae itself. Some scholars speculate that these signs of destruction could indicate that the Mycenaean elites fell into disarray, potentially leading to internal conflict, rebellion, or revolt. This political fragmentation would have made it difficult for the Mycenaeans to effectively defend themselves against external threats, such as the possible incursions of the Dorians or other groups. Furthermore, the collapse of the Mycenaean system had profound effects on the broader Aegean world. The fall of the Mycenaean palaces coincided with the end of the so-called Bronze Age in Greece, a period marked by great artistic and technological achievements. Following the collapse, the Greek world entered what is often referred to as the Dark Ages, a period of significant cultural regression. Many of the advancements of the Mycenaeans, such as their advanced pottery, art, and writing system, known as Linear B, disappeared, and literacy was lost for several centuries. The once thriving cities were abandoned, and much of the Aegean world reverted to smaller, more decentralized communities. The causes of the Mycenaean collapse are likely multifaceted, and it is important to recognize that no single factor can account for the downfall of such a complex society. It is possible that the combination of military invasion, internal upheaval, climate change, and economic disruption led to a cascade of events that brought about the Mycenaean sudden fall from power. Despite the mystery surrounding their collapse, the legacy of the Mycenaeans endured in the myths, literature, and culture of the ancient Greeks. The Mycenaeans' impact on Greek civilization is most evident in the works of Homer, whose epics drew heavily on the Mycenaean past, portraying the great warriors, kings, and cities that had once defined the ancient world. Today, the ruins of Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, and other Mycenaean sites stand as silent witnesses to the grandeur and mystery of this ancient civilization. The tombs of the Mycenaean kings, particularly the so-called Treasury of Atrus, are awe-inspiring structures that showcase the engineering and artistic achievements of the time. The rediscovery of the Mycenaean civilization in the 19th century by archaeologists such as Heinrich Schliemann sparked a renewed interest in the ancient Greek world and helped to illuminate the connections between myth and history. The fall of the Mycenaeans is a story of a once great civilization undone by a combination of external forces and internal struggles. Yet, their legacy lived on, not only through the myths and stories that were passed down through generations, but also through the tangible remains of their culture. The Mycenaeans were the precursors to classical Greek civilization, and their achievements in art, architecture, and warfare laid the foundations for the later rise of Greek culture and philosophy. Their mysterious decline, marked by the collapse of their palaces and the loss of their cities, remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of ancient history. Still, it serves as a reminder of the transient nature of even the most powerful civilizations. How, despite their achievements, they too can fade away into the dust of time, leaving behind only the whisper of their once great glory. Long before the rise of classical Greece, another powerful and enigmatic civilization thrived in the Aegean world, the Minoans. Centered on the island of Crete, the Minoan civilization flourished from around 2000 BCE to 1450 BCE, peaking during the so-called Old Palace and New Palace periods. The Minoans were sophisticated traders, skilled artisans, and advanced builders, creating one of the most vibrant cultures of the ancient Mediterranean. Yet, Despite their monumental achievements in art, architecture, and culture, the Minoan civilization mysteriously collapsed around 1450 BCE, leaving behind only remnants of their once great cities, their writing system, and a legacy that continues to spark debates among historians and archaeologists. What happened to the Minoans? Why did such a powerful civilization disappear so suddenly? This remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. The Minoans were not just isolated islanders, but rather a seafaring people who had vast trade networks that spanned the Mediterranean, from Egypt to the Near East, and even as far west as the Aegean Islands. The Minoan capital of Knossos, located on Crete, was the heart of their civilization and is perhaps the most famous archaeological site associated with their culture. The palace at Knossos, a sprawling complex of rooms, corridors, and courtyards, is a testament to Minoan architectural ingenuity. The labyrinthine design of the palace, with its intricate layouts and vibrant frescoes, has sparked numerous theories about its purpose and significance. Many scholars believe that the palace served as both a royal residence and a religious center, reflecting the central role of the monarchy in Minoan society. One of the most striking features of Minoan culture was their art. Minoan frescoes, which adorned the walls of palaces, temples, and villas, depicted a wide array of scenes, from ceremonial rituals to vibrant depictions of nature. These frescoes are known for their vivid colors and dynamic compositions, showcasing a deep appreciation for life and the natural world. The Minoans were particularly famous for their frescoes of bulls, which symbolized strength, fertility, and religious significance. The bull-leaping fresco from Knossos is perhaps the most famous example of this theme, depicting individuals leaping over bulls in a ceremonial display. This artwork, along with many others, suggests that the Minoans had a rich and complex religious life, likely centered around nature, fertility, and the worship of deities associated with the earth and the sea. In addition to their artistry, the Minoans were skilled in metallurgy, pottery, and other crafts. They produced exquisite pottery, much of which was traded with other Mediterranean cultures, and their bronze tools and weapons were highly valued across the region. The Minoans also developed a writing system, known as linear, which remains undeciphered to this day. This writing system, found on tablets and other artifacts, provides some insight into Minoan administration and religious practices, though the full extent of their written language remains elusive. The Minoans also had a complex social structure, with a powerful elite class and a thriving economy based on agriculture, trade, and craftsmanship. Trade was central to the Minoan economy, and they built extensive maritime routes that connected them to Egypt, the Near East, and other Aegean islands. Evidence of Minoan influence has been found across the Mediterranean, including in Egypt, where Minoan pottery and other goods have been discovered. The Minoans traded in commodities such as oil, grain, timber, and luxury items, and their ships were some of the most advanced in the ancient world. Their control over the seas and their wealth from trade allowed the Minoans to establish a vast network of influence, and for a time, they were one of the most powerful civilizations in the Mediterranean. Despite their achievements, the Minoan civilization began to decline around 1450 BCE. The exact cause of this decline is still a subject of debate, but several theories have emerged. One of the most widely accepted theories is the volcanic eruption of Thera, modern-day Santorini, which occurred around 1600 BCE, some 50 years before the Minoan collapse. This eruption was one of the largest volcanic events in recorded history, and it had a catastrophic impact on the Minoan civilization. The eruption sent ash and debris into the atmosphere, darkening the skies and affecting the climate across the region. It is believed that the eruption caused widespread crop failures and economic disruption, leading to a significant decline in Minoan prosperity. Additionally, the eruption may have triggered a series of earthquakes and tsunamis, further destabilizing the Minoan cities. Another theory for the collapse of the Minoans is invasion or warfare. Some historians believe that the Minoans were overrun by invading forces, possibly from the Mycenaeans, who were expanding their influence in the Aegean at the time. Archaeological evidence from the island of Crete shows signs of destruction and burning, suggesting that Minoan cities were sacked and abandoned. The Mycenaeans were known for their military prowess, and their culture, with its warrior ethos, may have eventually overtaken the more peaceful, trade-focused Minoans. Evidence of Mycenaean pottery and artifacts found on Crete suggests that the Mycenaeans may have moved into Minoan cities, further weakening the Minoan hold on the island. Yet another possibility is that the Minoan civilization collapsed due to internal factors, such as political instability, social unrest, or economic decline. As the Minoan cities grew more complex, they may have experienced internal divisions that led to the breakdown of centralized power. The end of the Minoan palaces and the abandonment of their once thriving cities could indicate that the society fractured under pressure, either from within or from external forces. Regardless of the exact cause, by the mid-15th century BCE, the Minoan civilization had all but vanished. The palaces of Crete were abandoned, and much of the knowledge and cultural practices associated with the Minoans disappeared. The Mycenaeans, who had been influenced by Minoan culture, gradually took control of Crete, and their warrior-based society came to dominate the region. While the Minoan influence persisted in the art and culture of the Mycenaeans, the civilization itself had largely faded from existence. Today, the Minoan civilization is remembered as one of the great enigmas of the ancient world. The ruins of the palaces at Knossos, Phaistos, and Malea stand as silent witnesses to a culture that once thrived and influenced the Mediterranean world. The intricate frescoes, the sophisticated plumbing systems, and the remarkable architecture of the Minoans provide a glimpse into a society that was both advanced and mysterious. Though much about the Minoans remains unknown, their legacy endures, particularly through their art, which continues to inspire admiration and wonder. The disappearance of the Minoans is a reminder of the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations. Their sudden collapse, whether due to environmental catastrophes, invasion, or internal instability, raises questions about the resilience of societies and the forces that shape their rise and fall. The Minoans may have disappeared from history, but their contributions to art, culture, and trade have left an indelible mark on the ancient Mediterranean world. As we look at the frescoes that adorn the walls of Knossos and other Minoan sites, we are reminded of the brilliance and mystery of this lost civilization, whose story is still waiting to be fully unraveled. Before the grandeur of the Aztecs and the Maya, long before the Spanish arrived on the shores of the New World, there existed a mysterious civilization that laid the foundation for much of what would come to define Mesoamerican culture. The Olmecs, a civilization that flourished in the tropical lowlands of southern Mexico between approximately 1200 BCE and 400 BCE, are often referred to as the mother culture of Mesoamerica due to their profound influence on later societies such as the Maya, Aztec, and Zapotec civilizations. Yet, for all their achievements, the Olmecs remain shrouded in mystery, with their sudden disappearance leaving scholars to ponder the reasons behind the collapse of one of the earliest and most enigmatic cultures in the Americas. The Olmecs are best known for their colossal stone heads, massive sculptures that can weigh several tons, each carved from basalt and representing rulers or deities. These heads, scattered across Olmec archaeological sites such as San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes, are not only striking in their scale and craftsmanship, but also serve as a reminder of the power and reach of this ancient civilization. The sheer effort required to transport these stones, some of which were moved from mountains more than 60 miles away, speaks to the Olmecs' advanced engineering and organizational skills. But these heads are just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface lies a complex society that left behind a rich legacy of art, architecture, and cultural practices. The Olmecs were skilled artisans and craftsmen, creating intricate jade figurines, masks, and other works of art that reflect their sophisticated understanding of symbolism and aesthetics. The use of jade, a stone that was highly prized for its beauty and rarity, was particularly significant in Olmec culture. They crafted jade masks and figures that were often associated with rulers or gods, suggesting a deep connection between art and religion. The Olmecs were also known for their pottery, which often depicted animals, gods, and mythological scenes, providing valuable insights into their religious beliefs and worldview. Religiously, the Olmecs practiced a form of animism, believing that natural forces and objects, such as animals, mountains, and the sky, possess spiritual significance. Their art and iconography reflect a pantheon of gods, including jaguars, serpents, and other creatures, many of which are believed to have had symbolic or totemic meanings. The Olmecs' reverence for the jaguar, in particular, is evident in their art and mythology, as the jaguar was often associated with power, strength, and the supernatural. Some scholars even believe that the jaguar played a central role in Olmec shamanism, with rulers and religious leaders potentially assuming jaguar-like traits during rituals. The Olmec society was organized into chiefdoms, with a central elite class that governed through a combination of religious authority and political power. At the heart of Olmec civilization were the urban centers of San Lorenzo and La Venta, two of the most important Olmec cities. San Lorenzo, the first major Olmec city, was a bustling center of political and religious activity, with large plazas, temples, and ceremonial centers. It was here that the famous colossal heads were first carved, and the site was home to the Olmecs' elaborate religious rituals and ceremonies. La Venta, which replaced San Lorenzo as the dominant Olmec center around 900 BCE, was even more impressive. The city was laid out with a remarkable sense of order, with large ceremonial platforms, a massive pyramid, and the iconic basalt altars. The grandeur of La Venta suggests that the Olmecs were not only skilled builders, but also possessed an advanced understanding of urban planning and architectural design. The presence of a massive mound at La Venta, which was likely used for religious ceremonies, further underscores the central role that religion and ritual played in Olmec society. In addition to their artistic and architectural achievements, the Olmecs were skilled in agriculture, relying on the fertile lands of the Gulf Coast region to produce maize, beans, squash, and other crops. They developed advanced irrigation techniques to cultivate these crops, allowing them to support a growing population and sustain their complex society. The Olmecs also had a highly organized trade network, exchanging goods such as jade, obsidian, and ceramics with neighboring regions. This trade network helped spread Olmec influence far beyond their own territory, making them one of the most influential cultures of ancient Mesoamerica. Yet, for all their achievements, the Olmec civilization began to decline around 400 BCE. The reasons for their sudden fall are not entirely clear, but there are several theories that attempt to explain the disappearance of this once great culture. One possibility is environmental factors, such as flooding or shifts in climate, which may have disrupted the Olmec agricultural system. The Gulf Coast region is prone to flooding, and the decline of Olmec cities, such as San Lorenzo, coincides with evidence of changes in the local environment, including a drop in the availability of fresh water. Such environmental stress could have led to food shortages, social unrest, and the eventual collapse of the Olmec political system. Another theory points to internal conflict or political fragmentation as a factor in the collapse. As the Olmec civilization expanded, it may have become increasingly difficult to maintain control over such a vast and diverse territory. The centralization of power in the hands of the elite class may have led to growing social inequalities and dissatisfaction among the lower classes, resulting in internal strife. Some scholars believe that the abandonment of San Lorenzo and the decline of La Venta were the result of a series of power struggles and rebellions that destabilized the Olmec political structure. In addition to internal and environmental factors, the Olmecs may have been undermined by external threats. The rise of other Mesoamerican cultures, such as the Zapotecs and the Maya, could have challenged Olmec dominance in the region. These emerging cultures may have displaced or absorbed the Olmecs, contributing to their decline. The Olmecs' eventual disappearance from the historical record may reflect the shift of power to other Mesoamerican civilizations that adopted and adapted many aspects of Olmec culture. Despite their eventual collapse, the legacy of the Olmec civilization lived on in the cultures that followed them. The Maya, in particular, were heavily influenced by Olmec art, religion, and architecture, adopting many Olmec symbols and motifs in their own cultural practices. The Olmec's influence on the later civilizations of Mesoamerica is also evident in their ball game, which became a central feature of Mesoamerican societies, as well as in their religious iconography and ritual practices. Today, the Olmecs remain one of the most mysterious and intriguing civilizations of the ancient world. While much has been uncovered about their art, culture, and achievements, many questions remain unanswered. Who were the Olmecs? Where did they come from? What led to their sudden disappearance? These questions continue to puzzle scholars, but their lasting impact on Mesoamerican culture is undeniable. The colossal heads, the intricate jade carvings, and the remains of their cities stand as enduring symbols of a civilization that shaped the ancient Americas. The Olmecs may have vanished from the historical record, but their cultural legacy continues to resonate throughout Mesoamerican history.